The Book TV bus is traveling the country, visiting bookstores, libraries, festivals, and authors. Here are some of the people and places we visited.
We're here with Dr. Robert Watson, author of The Presidential Companion, Readings on the First Ladies. Dr. Watson, why did you write this book?
Well, first off, let me say the book was with the University of South Carolina Press, and I did the book with a colleague and a good friend of mine at James Madison University, Professor Anthony Exterwitz. And the genesis of the book really dates to the 1990s. When Hillary Clinton became First Lady, I listened to the press describe her as an unprecedented new kind of First Lady, a new kind of activist in the White House. And my recollection, my understanding of the First Ladyship was this simply wasn't the case. That Hillary Clinton was not so much a new kind of First Lady as she was simply the rule and not the exception. She was simply the latest in a long line of First Ladies who have been influential, who have their fingerprints all over the history of the White House and the American presidency, dating back clearly to Eleanor Roosevelt and probably all the way back to Abigail Adams, our second First Lady. And since the book has come out and I've done additional research, we realize now that it dates all the way back to Martha Washington. And if George Washington remains known to history as the father of his country, I believe there's a case to be made that Martha Washington deserves to be known as the mother of her country. So we felt that it was time for a comprehensive scholarly investigation of not only the individuals who served as First Lady, but the institution itself.
Is there a consensus on who has been the most influential First Lady?
There is. There have been 4 polls done on ranking and evaluating the First Ladies themselves, their contributions, their roles. 2 were done by the Siena Research Institute, one in the 80s and one in the 90s, and then 2 were done by myself, one in the 90s and one about 2 years ago. And overwhelmingly, Eleanor Roosevelt came out as the #1 First Lady in the poll. Now, although Eleanor Roosevelt is one of my heroes, and one of the reasons why I've written on the First Ladies, I don't know that she's really the most influential. Eleanor may be the most influential in that she blazed trails for the modern First Ladyship. As FDR is oftentimes considered to be the first modern president and has changed inextricably, it's changed in many ways the office of the presidency, Eleanor Roosevelt changed the office of the First Lady. All presidents since FDR have served in the formidable shadow of FDR, but all First Ladies since Eleanor have served in her shadow. But there have been other First Ladies who could be equally, if not more, influential. For example, John Adams, we know, consulted his wife on almost every political decision. Even though John Adams, the great intellect that he was, considered by the Founding Fathers, an impressive cerebral group themselves, considered by them to be the intellect of the group, to be the philosopher of the group. When the Founding Fathers came to a difficult question on political philosophy or history, they looked to Adams. And Adams himself considered himself to be the intellect of the group. Despite that, John Adams considered his wife Abigail, an uneducated woman in the 1700s, to be his intellectual equal in every sense of the word. He consulted her on diplomatic efforts and issues back at home. Adams's letters are full of wonderful inquiries where he would say something to the effect of, "I've just heard from Jefferson or somebody. Now, Abigail, you tell me what you think and what's really going on." Martha Washington made George Washington possible. Had it not been for Martha, there might never have been a George. So in and of itself, the fact that she helped put George Washington on the political map, and without Washington, the Revolutionary War might have turned out differently. Without Washington, the country's course would have been dramatically different. So the simple fact that Martha helped make what we knew to be George Washington means that her influence is not measurable. But Eleanor Roosevelt was #1 in all 4 of the polls conducted by historians on the First Ladies.
How much control do First Ladies have over their office?
How much control do they have over their office? I'm tempted to say not much at all and an awful lot, depending on how we define control in the office. First off, the First Ladyship is not really an office. It's what I call an extra constitutional office. The Founding Fathers never discussed it. There's nothing in the Constitution. There's no statutory founding for the First Ladyship. But what's happened over time is First Ladies have needed staff, they've needed aides, they've needed speechwriters, and what's emerged is kind of this informal office. The first First Lady to have an office was Teddy Roosevelt's wife, Edith. All the way back in 1902, she was so popular, she couldn't keep up with all the social invitations, all the requests for information about her active brood of young boys running around the White House and her intriguing and charismatic husband, that he had to assign a clerk from the War Department named Isabel Hagner to work for her. Jackie Kennedy had over 40 people working for her, and all first ladies since Jackie have had between about a dozen on the low end, Laura Bush, to about 24 on the high end, Hillary Rodham Clinton. So they're allowed to put their office together, but all the funding and the enabling for the office comes directly from the office of the president.
Finally, if Hillary Clinton is to make a presidential run, what sort of advantages would she have as a former First Lady?
Well, she would know the way Washington works. She would know the way the White House works. But one of my recent books is called Anticipating Madam President, so it's a topic I've thought a lot about. But I think the disadvantages she would have would be more so. Even today, the public doesn't perceive the First Lady as that credible. Nancy Reagan, even though she was a force in the White House, was perceived as lipstick and high heels who looked adoringly up at Ronnie, when behind the scenes we know she's the one that fired Donald Reagan, the chief of staff. We know that she had a major impact on Reagan's public life and so forth. So Hillary would probably face a number of gender-based obstacles, and I think the real interesting question here is if she were to win, what would we call Bill? First man, first gent, first hubby? We haven't even crossed that bridge yet, and I think the only thing safe to say is this, is if we look at women world leaders, and there's been roughly 53 since the end of World War II, women world leaders all over the globe, or we look at female governors, their husbands have not been expected to host teas or to decorate the executive office, and their husbands have been allowed to continue their own careers and lives pretty much uninterrupted. So we'll see if that were to happen one day when we ultimately have a woman commander-in-chief.
Dr. Watson, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
For more information about the Book TV bus, visit our website at booktv.com.